There are moments in every royal family's history that never appear in official statements, moments when duty and personal conviction collide behind closed doors. Sometimes those moments quietly reshape the future of a monarchy without the public ever knowing what truly happened. This is one of those stories. Although inspired by real public figures, the events you're about to hear are entirely fictional. It began on a quiet autumn morning inside Madrid's royal palace. The palace corridors were unusually silent. Staff members moved carefully, sensing that something important was about to happen. No one knew exactly what, but everyone had noticed the unusual number of private meetings scheduled between King Felipe and his senior advisors. Princess Leonor had just returned from another demanding phase of her military training. She carried herself with the confidence expected of Spain's future queen, yet those closest to her noticed something had changed. She seemed calmer, more thoughtful, less willing to simply accept every decision made for her. King Felipe waited inside his private study. When Leonor entered, she immediately noticed maps spread across the large oak table. Alongside them were official schedules, diplomatic calendars, and several carefully prepared speeches. The king smiled warmly. "Sit down," he said. "I want to discuss the next 5 years." Leonor nodded respectfully. For nearly an hour, Felipe explained his vision. Every public appearance, every international visit, every military assignment, every charity project, every interview, everything had already been planned with incredible precision. According to the strategy, Leonor would gradually become the visible face of the monarchy while avoiding unnecessary controversy. Every speech would be carefully reviewed. Every friendship would be evaluated. Every public image would be managed. It was a perfect royal roadmap. When Felipe finished speaking, silence filled the room. Leonor looked down at the papers before slowly raising her eyes. "I understand why you've prepared all of this." Felipe smiled. "I'm glad. But that single word changed everything. But I don't think this is how I want to become queen." The king's expression froze. He had expected questions. He had expected suggestions. He had even expected disagreements over minor details. He had not expected complete rejection. "What do you mean?" he asked carefully. Leonor took a deep breath. "You've planned every step, every conversation, every appearance, every decision." She gently pushed the folder back across the table. "But none of it feels like my own journey." Felipe remained silent. For a long moment, father and daughter looked at each other, not as monarch and heir, but simply as a father watching his daughter grow beyond the plans he had made for her. "You think I'm controlling you," he finally said. Leonor shook her head. "No, I think you're trying to protect me. But protection isn't the same as preparation." Those words landed heavily. Felipe had spent years believing that shielding Leonor from mistakes was the best way to prepare her for the throne. Now she was suggesting the opposite. "I need room to make my own decisions. I need to learn. I need to earn people's trust, not because every moment has been scripted, but because they can see who I really am." The king stood and walked toward the palace window. Outside, tourists gathered beyond the gates. Many waved Spanish flags. Some hoped to catch a glimpse of the royal family. "They expect perfection," Felipe quietly said. Leonor joined him by the window. "No, they expect honesty." For several minutes neither spoke. The silence itself became part of the conversation. Finally Felipe turned. "So what exactly are you asking?" Leonor answered without hesitation. "I want more responsibility. I also want more freedom. I want to visit communities without enormous ceremonies. I want to spend more time listening than speaking. I want fewer scripted appearances. And I want to make some decisions myself." The king sighed. "That isn't how royal institutions usually work." "Maybe," Leonor replied, "but maybe that's why they struggle to connect with younger generations." The statement surprised him. It wasn't rebellious. It wasn't emotional. It was thoughtful, carefully reasoned. The little girl he once guided through palace corridors was now presenting her own vision of leadership. Later that afternoon, Felipe gathered several senior advisors. They expected to finalize Leonor's upcoming schedule. Instead, the king announced something unexpected. "We're reviewing everything." Confused looks filled the room. One advisor objected. "Your Majesty, these plans have taken months." Felipe nodded. "I know, but plans can change." Word quietly spread throughout the palace that the princess had challenged the proposed strategy. Rumors circulated among staff members. Some believed there had been a serious argument. Others imagined a growing division within the royal household. The reality was far quieter. There had been no shouting. No slammed doors. Only two people honestly expressing different visions of the future. Over the following weeks, subtle changes appeared. Some engagements became smaller. Leonor requested longer visits with students, volunteers, and military personnel instead of rushing from one official photo opportunity to another. She asked questions that weren't included in briefing documents. She stayed after events to continue conversations. Many advisors worried these unscripted moments created unnecessary risk. Felipe watched carefully. To his surprise, the public response was overwhelmingly positive. People described Leonor as approachable, authentic, interested, comfortable speaking naturally. One evening the king reviewed newspaper headlines. Several praised the princess's ability to connect with ordinary citizens. None mentioned carefully planned messaging. Instead, they praised sincerity. Felipe slowly leaned back in his chair. Perhaps she had been right. Weeks later, father and daughter met again. This time there were no thick folders waiting on the table. Only 2 cups of coffee. Felipe smiled first. I've been thinking. Leonor waited patiently. When I became king, I inherited expectations. I wanted to make your path easier than mine. She listened quietly. But maybe, he paused. Maybe I confused making it easier with making every decision for you. Leonor reached across the table. You've always wanted what's best for me. I know. The king nodded. And you want what's best for Spain. Yes. They shared a quiet smile. Not because every disagreement had disappeared, but because they had learned something important. Respect doesn't require complete agreement. In the months that followed, Felipe gradually adjusted his approach. Instead of presenting finished plans, he invited Leonor into the planning process. Instead of giving instructions, he asked questions. Instead of protecting her from every difficult situation, he trusted her judgment. It wasn't always comfortable. Sometimes Leonor chose different priorities. Sometimes she insisted on changes advisors disliked. Sometimes she surprised everyone, including her father. Yet each decision helped her grow into the leader she hoped to become. One memorable visit illustrated the difference perfectly. An official schedule allowed only 15 minutes with local volunteers. Leonor quietly asked whether she could stay longer. The security team hesitated. The advisors looked uncertain. Felipe simply nodded. Go ahead. The visit lasted over an hour. She listened to families. She spoke with children. She thanked elderly volunteers personally. Photos from the day spread widely. Not because of grand ceremonies, but because they captured genuine conversations. Later that evening Felipe saw one photograph that particularly caught his attention. Leonor wasn't standing on a stage. She wasn't delivering a prepared speech. She was laughing alongside ordinary citizens. Completely at ease. He smiled. Years earlier he would have worried about the lack of formal structure. Now he saw something different. Confidence. Not the confidence created by perfect planning. The confidence earned through experience. One night, while walking through the palace gardens, Felipe caught up with Leonor. The day you rejected my plan. She smiled. I didn't reject you. I know. I rejected the idea that my future had already been written. Felipe laughed softly. And I'm beginning to understand the difference. They continued walking beneath the evening sky. Neither spoke for several minutes. They didn't need to. The conversation that had begun months earlier had quietly transformed their relationship. Father had become mentor. Mentor had become partner. And daughter had become future queen in her own way. History often remembers dramatic speeches, grand ceremonies, and public celebrations. But sometimes the most important turning points happen in private rooms, with quiet conversations and difficult honesty. The day Princess Leonor walked away from King Felipe's carefully prepared plan wasn't the day she turned against her father. It was the day she stepped toward becoming her own leader. And perhaps, in the end, that was exactly the future King Felipe had always hoped for, even if it arrived in a way he never expected. As the palace lights glowed against the Madrid skyline, one thing had become clear. The future of the monarchy would not simply be inherited. It would be shaped together. Not through perfect plans, but through trust. And sometimes, the greatest act of leadership is knowing when to let the next generation write its own story. The end.